Hey everybody, welcome back. EDGYTIM here along with Mike Clark, and welcome back to the Between the Lines podcast. And if you're like us, an incredibly frustrated Chicago pro sports fan, well, we'll do our best to not talk Chicago pro sports. Joining me is Mike Clark, and yeah, Mike, it's quite the times to be a Chicago sports fan these days, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of, I don't know if excitement's the right word, interest in what the Blackhawks will be doing, in year two of the Connor Bedard era, but that might be the brightest spot now, I would say, probably. Yeah. I mean, they're coming off the worst season in their history, so.
Well, a lot of that going around town. So.
Yes, I know it's kind of amazing, isn't it?
It is.
Blackhawks are coming off their worst season. The Sox are having the worst season ever. The Cubs, I don't know, it just kind of didn't really have anything going. The Bulls are kind of stuck in that mediocrity phase, and here we are.
Yeah, but we're here to talk. We're here to talk high school football. We sure are. Glad to.
Yep.
All right. So, Mike, I know you spent another weekend busy out covering games, and so fill us in. Give us a recap on your weekend.
Okay. On Friday night, I went out to Wheaton to see St. Rita and St. Francis. Actually, the first time I've been to St. Francis. They've got a really nice campus, I will say. So props to them for that. They do have an east-west field, too.
The TF North, yes.
TF also. North, Glenbard West, Rich Township. There's a few. There's not a lot of them, and you kind of see it in games like this why there aren't very many of them, because at twilight, which is coming earlier now, it's kind of tough, especially in the sophomore game. The team that was going into the sun, it was not an easy time. So that's why they're. If people ever wondered why there aren't very many east-west fields, that's
why. Yeah, pretty good reason.
Yeah. For the game, St. Rita wins 31-13. St. Rita, I think, is a team to keep an eye on. They're 3-1, only losses to Mount Carmel, and obviously they will not see the Caravan again because they're in different classes. But a lot to like about this Rita team, I think. Defense is really solid. Justin Buckner, who is one of their linebackers, they also gave him 3 carries out of the Wildcat. 2 of them went for touchdowns. They only had 1 carry total coming into this week on the season. Stephen Armbruster is their quarterback. They had him running a little bit more, especially in the first half. And Nick Herman is a really solid running back as well. So Nick Herman, 23 carries, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think the thing that really impressed me is how creative the offense was. Because again, Buckner, they didn't run Buckner out of the Wildcat the first 3 weeks. They didn't run Armbruster a lot the first 3 weeks, but they didn't say, okay, we're going to keep doing the same thing. So I think that probably gave the St. Francis defense some fits because whatever their scouting report is probably didn't work out too well. So kudos to the St. Rita offensive coordinators, offensive coaches for coming up with that. On the other side, got to see Brady Palmer for the first time from St. Francis. He is as billed. 281 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. One of them was a 98-yarder to Tanner Glock. It was a good distance in the air too. It was not, sometimes you see these long touchdowns, they're like a screen pass.
Yeah, exactly.
It runs for 75 or 80 yards. Now this one was, 40, 45 yards in the air, and then, obviously the receiver did the rest. But St. Francis, one thing to keep an eye on, Tyvon Ransom, they're a really good running back, went out. Bob McMillan said he tweaked a knee, I believe. Hopefully it's not serious. The one concern maybe for the Spartans, they have 35 kids on the roster.
Right.
So not a lot of depth there, unfortunately. And but they're really good. So, certainly a team that's, based off of the Loyola win and, where the program has been at, certainly a team that's going to be one we're going to be looking at in the postseason.
Yeah, I saw, Mike, I read your lead on this. I thought it was really well done and kind of just nailed it. I don't think Rita was necessarily overlooked, but I just think we really didn't know what to expect from them in the preseason. I mean, as you mentioned, they're, Armbruster, I know, got some reps last year and, I thought did pretty well. And Nick Herman certainly, was gotten his amount of carries, and I pretty much considered him a starter last year. And, you always know defensively they're going to be tough, but, Marty Hopkins is going to be a very good coach at St. Rita if people haven't figured that out by now. Former alum, just great guy, really strong personality, and, he's one of those guys that he is going to do some things the old way, the old guard, but I think he's smart enough to work in some new school stuff as well, as you mentioned, Wildcat and various things. Yeah, they're going to be very good, and I thought you kind of nailed it with your lead as far as more just not knowing what to expect from them. And then St. Francis, you kind of nailed it with 35 guys on the roster. And again, I think you'll see this with a lot of the smaller enrollment CCL, ESCC teams. If you could survive the 9 weeks, you might be in pretty good shape once the playoffs start. And I think that's definitely the case for St. Francis.
Yeah, for sure. So on Saturday, I went to Taft. They wound up playing. They usually play their games on Friday night. They switched this one to Saturday. Actually, they played Amundsen, Public League Red game. Taft 21-14, and both teams were missing some key players. Jaden Padilla, who is Taft's all-time leader in rushing attempts, rushing yards, and touchdowns, did not play. And Amundsen was missing Elmer Geika, their veteran quarterback, and 4 other starters. So the other thing that I'll put out there is this was probably as hot a game as I can ever remember.
Yeah, same.
It was on the turf, and except for there was a little stretch in the second half where there was a little bit of a breeze, but it was just still. And the fact that it was still and so hot, I think made it feel even worse. Funny thing is, it's like one of the officials, we were talking with one of the officials on the sideline early in the game, and he asked he kind of was kind of joking about how hot it was, and it was 85, which doesn't sound that bad, but I guarantee you it felt much worse than that. So, it was a tough one, just kind of a grinded out type of a game. Steven Carrera had 18 carries, 83 yards, 2 touchdowns for Taft. And another senior, Jaden Samaron, they call him Samurai, actually had a TD catch and a tackle for loss to end the last Amundsen drive. Steven Carrera's got kind of an interesting story. I wrote about it a couple of years ago. And he is the kid who was a sophomore heading into his sophomore year 2 years ago. Fireworks accident, and to have 2 fingers on his right hand amputated, his index finger and his middle finger, and didn't know if he was ever going to play football again. Had to learn how to do all these sorts of things left-handed. He's a natural righty. He had to learn how to write left-handed. He had to learn how to brush his teeth left-handed, all that kind of stuff. Great story. He has told me he's getting some D2, D3 interest. Not a big kid. He's 5'6", actually, and Zach Elder, the Taft coach, said that he plays like he's 6'2", 240, which is a pretty good description, I would say. On the other side, Amundsen's backup quarterback, his name is Smith Beeson. He had a pretty nice game, actually. 12 of 16 passing, 94 yards, a couple of touchdowns. No massive plays,
right,
but just running the clock and everything. And these are 2 teams that are 2 of the better public league teams, especially on the north side. Taft has been, kind of building for a few years, and They had a 4-win regular season last year, got into the playoffs, and played Lincoln Way East in the first round. And kind of their goal this year is to have a better record so they don't have to go on the road and play Lincoln Way East in the first round. So they're 3-1 now. Look to be in good shape for that. Amundsen's also 3-1, and I've written about Amundsen in the past as well. Nick Olson has done a tremendous job. He came in and was, there were I think we even said this last week. He came the first day of practice. There were like 12 or 13 kids there. He's built up into a really good program right now, and more only good things ahead. And Amundsen's playoff path is probably a little bit easier too because they're 5A, 6A teams, so they can get some manageable first round games. They've never won a state playoff game, and that's kind of their goal. That's the thing they're pushing toward, is to get that first playoff win. So that was my weekend then.
I'm glad you talked about Steven Carrera, who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years through recruiting circles. He's been to, I think he's been to every camp I've had over the last couple of years, and really gotten to know him. And besides a really good player, Mike, he's a great young man. I mean, just love talking to that kid. And you talk about someone that just is upbeat and positive, and he is going to play college football. There is no doubt in my mind he's going to find somewhere that's a really good fit for him and end up doing well. But yeah, he's a totally an inspirational story, and again, it's one of the many benefits of doing what we do, Mike. We get to meet some pretty cool younger people and see how they're able to overcome various things, and that's obviously a huge one that Stephen was able to overcome. And again, just proud to kind of call him my friend, and again, he's one of those kids that he's gonna. By hook or by crook, he's going to find his way onto a college football field next year. I don't have any doubts in that. So, again, glad you talked about him a little bit. Friday, I decided to head I almost said out of state, headed downstate, ended up going to Glenwood in Chatham, Illinois. They hosted defending 4A state champ and Power Rochester. Incredible game, both in the Central State 8. Big game, obviously, in the conference. Glenwood's only loss was at Edwardsville, and you talk to people down there, they kind of think they shoulda, coulda, mighta beat Edwardsville. It was a very tight game. Rochester, Derek Leonard, he is now down to his third quarterback this year. And as Mike, it seems like that's kind of been a constant storyline that we've heard this year, that if you got one good quarterback, you better hope you can find a couple others, because it's just an unfortunate part of the game sometimes. So yeah, his starter got hurt in week 2. Then the backup was a starter to begin the game on Friday, and then he ended up getting hurt and left the game, unfortunately, and he was on crutches. So not a great thing for sure. And then so the third quarterback, who's also a pretty good defensive back, Tanner Beal, who's a junior, took over. And Mike, it's just one of those where Rochester's still a very good team. By the way, I'll talk about Glenwood in a minute, but they won 45-17 was the final, so it was a big upset win certainly for Glenwood. Rochester's one of those teams, Mike, where Derek Leonard, I feel, is such a good coach. He will find a way to make this work. I mean, he's gone heavy run in the past. I think this year he might end up doing that. He certainly tried to attempt that on Friday night and just had limited success. But again, there's still a lot there for Rochester. They're good up front. They've got good size, enough skilled kids to make something work. And believe me, that mad scientist Derek Leonard is gonna cook something up, and they're gonna continue to win games, and they'll go in the 4A. And I still think they'll be one of the favorites to win 4A. And then Glenwood, very good team. David Hayes done a nice job since, longtime assistant there, and then finally get the head coaching job a handful of years ago. Mike, the atmosphere there was incredible. You're talking, I'd say 4,000 or 5,000 fans, completely sold out, packed. I guess the best way I could describe Glenwood High School's atmosphere is kind of think like the high school version of like Clemson. They actually have their own hill. And if you go on my Instagram, and I don't know if I put it on my Twitter or not, but I've got video of them playing Enter Sandman, and then they run down the hill, and it is incredibly cool. And again, just a ton of fun there on a Friday night. As I mentioned, packed crowd, big game. Glenwood's very good. That they were expected to be pretty good this year. They have a very good junior class. Their junior quarterback, Colton Knabler, again, had, I believe, 6 touchdown passes in the win, and they're just a very, very strong team. I think if you're keeping an eye on 6A and you're a 6A fan out there, you definitely want to watch the Glenwood Titans a little bit, because I think they've got a chance to get in and maybe advance down the 6A line a little bit. Of course, nothing easy, especially if you're south like Glenwood, and they realize it, because you're going to run into the likes of East St. Louis or maybe a Kankakee. Is Kankakee 5 or 6? I always kind of forget on them, but there's
Kankakee is 5. Kankakee is 5A.
Yeah, so then you'll run into, a Crete-Monee, some very good teams in the south part of 6A. But again, very, very good team. And then Saturday I went out to Lyons Township for homecoming. They took on Glenbard West. Obviously, rough go of it for Glenbard West. Wanted to see for myself up close, and it's kind of similar to the last couple of years, unfortunately, for Chad Hetlett. Just injuries have certainly played a role. Some key kids have been out, and just, again, the storyline, they're just kind of struggling at a handful of positions. And Lions, very solid team. Again, 24-7 was the final. Very, very impressed. A big storyline going into the season, Mike, for Lions was they had a huge senior class that graduated in the spring. Ton of multi-year starters, and Orion Jackson, the quarterback, was a 3-4-year starter for Lions. So I think the question going in was, how much of that slack can the senior class, this senior class now pick up from a year ago? And they really have. Travis Stam is an excellent wide receiver, safety, verbally committed to Illinois State. Danny Carroll's a multi-year starter at running back, had a nice game, and they've just been able to, as Coach Butcher mentioned in the post game, they found guys that have stepped up, and a lot of them are seniors and maybe didn't start, but they were guys that bought in and worked hard. And first time in 8 years that Lions beat Glenbard West, so that'll tell you the stranglehold that they've had on them for a while. So again, just a very hot game, as you mentioned. Weather's just was just kind of awful. But got through it. Everyone got through it okay and healthy. And big win for Lions. They're 4-0 now. And, things continue to shape up. The interesting thing with Glenbard West now, Mike, is can they potentially run the field? I don't know. Because, you get by, you still have Downers North. You still have Hinsdale Central. You've got some monster teams there. We'll see how it shakes out, Mike, but I'm not real confident in the hitters being able to win out and get the 4 or 5 wins. We'll see.
Yeah, it is tough. Although they played Downers North already, that was the last.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So basically, they do have York.
Yep.
They're. I would say, there's definitely a path to 4 wins there. York might be tough, but they're going to have a ton of points, obviously.
Yep.
So I don't think it's necessarily over yet. The only 2 things I would say: number one, it's a grass field at Dushan, so not as hot as turf. Also,
this was at Lions.
Oh, it was at Lions.
Yes.
And
they always play. Okay. Yeah, they always play homecoming on Saturday. My bad. I should have let you know ahead of time.
No, that's true. You're right. If it had been at Dushan, it would have been a little bit better because it's a grass field and there's actually trees around there, but not too much shade at Lions. So you're right. Okay, let's get on to some other games, some other big games. Batavia 45, St. Charles North 21. Kind of a wild one here. Batavia outscored St. Charles North 42-7 in the second half. Another big night for Nathan Whitwell, 40 carries, 255 yards, 5 touchdowns. Nice defensive effort for Malachi Smith, one of the kids back for the Bulldogs. We talked about that a little bit, about how they didn't have a lot of starters back. He had 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 3 quarterback hurries. For the North Stars, Joel Holloman had 109 rushing yards and a touchdown, and he had a 20-yard scoop and score. So Batavia keeps on winning and, getting better as well, because it's one of the things that Dennis Perron's been talking about. It's like they just really needed to get some experience and get better. And, when you're winning games, as you're going through this, obviously it's a little better, especially in that conference. So the Bulldogs are up to 4-0 now. Big one in Joliet, JCA 31, Marist 30 in overtime. Hilltoppers come from 10 down in the fourth quarter. Larry Stringham, a big game for JCA, 22 carries, 203 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. That is Marist's first loss of the year. Loyola 28, Brother Rice 21. Ryan Fitzgerald is back for the Ramblers, 16-23 passing, 151 yards, 4 touchdowns, 60 rushing yards, and his big receiver this game was Conlon Kane, 4 catches, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And that's kind of the way. That's such a typical Loyola thing.
Yep.
They have so many receivers, and one game it's one guy, one game it's somebody else. That's kind of the way it's been, for these last few years. On the Rice side, C.J. Gray, their quarterback, 326 total yards and 3 touchdowns. Big MSL CSL crossover. Barrington 42, Maine South 35. Nick Piepert, 400 passing yards, 4 touchdowns for the Broncos, who are 4-0. And sophomore Jackson Purcell is the man now for Maine South, 470 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Maine South is 1-3, getting through that just absolute
gauntlet.
Early season schedule. Things get much more manageable for the Hawks going forward. So would not surprise me to see them run the table now. Morgan Park 20, Kenwood 0. Another public league reg game up at Lane. Scoreless first half, and then Morgan Park scores 3 touchdowns in the second half. Marcus Thaxton, 11-17 passing, 188 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the Sear Rankin had 3 catches for 114 and a touchdown. So those are some of the big games.
Hey, we got to mention that Morgan Park game that Chris James unfortunately had a health incident on the sideline during that game. I don't know if you saw that or not. I think did Mike O'Brien cover that game? Someone from the Times covered it.
Yeah.
Chris is doing fine. I talked to him last night. But Mike, he talked about it. He just said that, it happens, and just got overheated and sat down and got some electrolytes and got some fluid in him and settled down, and he was fine. But yeah, Mike, that, as we talked about, it's week 4. We're not used to that kind of heat really in week 4. Usually it's kind of gone by the wayside, but this extended summer period is definitely still a factor when it comes to high school football.
Yeah, he was okay. He was talking after the game, too, when he came back to coach. So nothing serious there. So let's get into some other big performances, and there's a bunch of them. Geneva keeps rolling on. 63-14 win over Lake Park. Anthony Chihino, it feels like he's
every week.
He's on this list every week. Yeah, 7 of 10 passing, 262 yards, 5 touchdowns. Talon Taylor had 3 of those touchdowns on 3 catches. So 3 catches, 3 touchdowns, 114. Here's a name we haven't mentioned for a while, Bennett. Bennett is 4-0 for the first time in more than 10 years.
Yep.
Ryan Kabaki, their quarterback, 265 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 23-16 win over St. Viator. For Libertyville, they keep rolling on. Quinn Shambo, the quarterback, 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 29-14 win over Lake Zurich. Also, Steven Strello, if I'm not pronouncing that right, 222 total yards rushing and receiving. and Blaze La Vista, 114 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. So the Wildcats again keep rolling, and I know you've promised to go see them at some point.
I'm coming. Not next week, but I'm coming.
Okay. Rolling Meadows, nice win for Robbie Gold. And Rolling Meadows 38-7 over Maine West, that actually had a 14-game regular season winning streak snapped in that one. Armin Lepazanovic, hopefully I'm getting that one right.
Looks pretty close. Looks pretty close.
3 touchdowns, 214 total yards, and an interception. Also, Quincy Johnson, the Rolling Meadows quarterback, 13 of 18, 265 and 4 touchdowns. York keeps rolling, 4-0 now. 42-21 win over OPRF. Bruno Massell, 262 total yards, 3 touchdowns. Prairie Ridge, Luke Vanderwill, the quarterback, 24 carries, 238 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. 35-13 win over Huntley. For Morris, Brady Varner, their quarterback, 14 of 19, 233, 4 touchdowns, and a 52-14 win over LaSalle Peru. Martin Cohen, the running back from Antioch, 212 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a 61-yard pass, and a 41-6 win over Lakes. And finally, Plainfield North defensive lineman Colin Myers had 3.5 sacks and a 28-3 win over Joliet West.
There you go. Quite a few. Long list, a lot of research there, Mike, so well done. Interesting couple of teams in that mix. You mentioned Plainfield North started 0-2, a couple of very tough games. Keep an eye on them. They're gonna take off here, and then obviously we'll start playing Southwest Prairie West play next week, and that conference could very well be up for grabs. There's really, I think, 4 or 5 really good teams there, so it's going to be kind of back and forth and going after each other. By the way, everyone, the Batavian, the Geneva fans, Week 6 is what you're waiting for. So that'll be coming up very soon. That one's shaping up to, kind of might be that rivalry game that so many of us remember for many, many years as being always close and always tight. And, give Geneva, Coach Thorson a lot of credit. They certainly are starting to hold up their end of that rivalry bargain. So it should be a really, really good game in Week 6, but I know we have a lot more games to get to before that one, Mike.
Yep, and I guess up next is questions, and we do have 3 this week.
Oh, we do? Good. I didn't see them.
Yeah, we have
Excellent.
3. 2 of them are from Marquise Brown, at quarterback _10_. And I'll read them both, and we can talk about them. The first one is, will Morgan Park be a threat in 5A, and will Mount Carmel repeat?
Yes, and yes? No, okay.
Yeah, Morgan Park is definitely a threat in 5A.
Agreed.
We talked about this before. They're really experienced. They were really good. I mean, they have an experienced quarterback, one of the better quarterbacks around, and a really good year for quarterbacks, Marcus Saxton. Terrence Gurley is their running back this year. He looks like he's given them another dimension, which they have to have. Obviously, Nasir Rankin is one of the top recruited juniors in the state. His receiver, very good secondary for the second year in a row. They got Javon Clark is going to Wyoming. Jamari Washington is going to Wisconsin, and Ahmad Grayer is going to be a D1 defensive back as well. Plus, Chris James does a great job. So, absolutely, they're coming off 2 trips to the quarterfinals, and they won't make any bones about it. They're trying to get farther this year. Mount Carmel, I have not seen them this year, but I have been reading all about them. They're the team to beat in 7A. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So Jeff Elliott's really good. They've got some other guys who've been they got some receivers who stepped up after a lot of the last year's receivers graduated, plus Darion Dupree, the running back, who's at Wisconsin now, graduated. So, I would say, if I had to pick a team right now, so Mount Carmel will repeat, I would have to say.
Yeah, I totally agree. After seeing them live this year, there's really no question in my mind. The defense, a little bit younger. The defense is giving up some points. But the talent level, Mike, out of those young guys on that defense is pretty exceptional. And I think by weeks 8, 9, they start really getting things put together. And obviously they'll get a huge test, I'm sure, week 9 against Loyola. Yeah, I mean, they are just going to be lockstep come playoff time. So I'd agree. I mean, I think right now I'd pick them to win 7A, and Chris James at Morgan Park has done a heck of a job. I mean, he has built that program to be a competitor at the state level and to win a state football title. I don't think there's any doubt about it that's always been the goal and the top step for that program. And it seems like every year they're getting closer. And you mentioned some of the stars on offense, defensively. Jamari Washington's a terrific receiver, safety type, and Scott offers from everywhere. Jovan Clark is another just really, really good football player that committed to Wyoming that I think will wind up being a sleeper. And yeah, I think Morgan Park is really good, and I think they'll give some people trouble. Look, they have the last couple of years, honestly. They've played pretty decent in the playoffs, and every year they seem to go a step further. So, yeah, I think Morgan Park's got a definite chance to make a little bit deeper run this year.
Yeah, the next one is a little bit tougher. It's from Weather on the Go at HWeather420. Is Dixon a sleeper team in 4A? Well, the Dukes are a little bit outside of my area of expertise.
Yep.
I looked them up. They're 3-0. They're a 4A team. Went 9-2 last year. They had 3 pretty lopsided wins so far, but their toughest games are coming up. They've got
Byron.
They got Byron in week 8, and they've got Johnson City in week 11. That's a pickup game because Rockford Christian dropped. So, I don't really know too much about Dixon other than, what I can see, on IHSA.org. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I can't really.
They've been pretty solid. There's a couple of years on and off, but they throw the ball, Mike. They are a spread it out, throw it all over the field team, which is pretty rare for that conference. Obviously, to give people an example, Byron is the top team in that conference and probably will be after 9 weeks. I'm sure Byron will be a pretty heavy favorite to win that game and to win the Big Northern. But very solid team, as you mentioned. It's a team that hopefully can get a few rounds deep. I think the problem is in 4A, you look at some of the potential landmines you can run into 4A, and they're big landmines, Mike. There's some big name teams and big time powers in 4A. So, just again, a lot of it depends on the matchups and depends on how the brackets fall. But Weather on the Go, not a bad name. It's definitely a name to keep an eye out for in 4A when you're talking playoff brackets for sure.
Yeah, and actually, I should say the Dukes are actually 4-0. They beat Genoa Kingston 40-7 this week. So again, 4 pretty lopsided wins so far. They should have some tougher games coming up. That's it for the questions. So I guess we are up to top week 5 games, and I've got a few on my list here. First of all, the Fox Valley championship game. I don't think there's much doubt about it. It's kind of crazy. It's a blocked conference, and again, which neither one of us is a fan of. But Cary Grove at Prairie Ridge. I'll be pretty surprised if either one of these teams loses after this. I know there's a couple of other teams that are decent in the conference. Jacobs, Huntley, among them. But this is probably for the conference. And it's the same thing. It's, we could do our preview for this game every single year. You just sub in the names, basically. Yeah. These are 2 teams that, are well coached. New coach this year, and Mike Frericks at Prairie Ridge. That's one of the few changes, basically. Brad Seberg is still at Cary Grove. Logan Abrams is the fullback at Cary Grove, who's the guy. We just mentioned. Prairie Ridge's quarterback is
Luke Vanderweel.
Right. So, Not much else to say about it except that again, this is going to be the.
I'll see everyone there Friday.
There you go. Yep. We've got JCA at Nazareth. Wow, just
another great game. Yeah,
another tough one for both of these teams that have had some tough games already. But the top of the CCL, ESCC, the top three conferences, probably I would say, definitely the top two conferences. There's just not much to let up there. So
I think for JCA, one of the big revelations this past week, beating Marist in overtime. It was actually 2 overtime, I think. Lucas Similek, the junior quarterback for Joliet Catholic, really had a good game, and that was one of the things the first 2 weeks. It just seemed like the passing game wasn't really getting on track, and it definitely got on track. It was a big factor offensively for JCA, and again, it's one of those things where if the Hilltoppers can get just a bit of production out of a play-action passing game, it just makes that run offense that much tougher. So, yeah, it's a big part of that going into it is I think JCA is feeling a lot better about their offense after that win over Marist.
Yeah, for sure. Next one, Batavia at Wheaton North is another big one, and they Duquesne. Again, Batavia just keeps winning.
And Wheaton North just beats people, They really do.
Yeah, Wheaton North's not an easy place to play,
no.
So that will be a fun one for sure. St. Francis goes to Providence. Another one of those CCL, ESCC high-level games for sure. Had a pretty cool story this week for those of you who may not have seen it in the Saturday Sun-Times about Coda Miller, who was a three-sport athlete, football, wrestling, track and field thrower for the Celtics. He also played the French horn in the marching band. So we had a great picture of him playing the French horn at halftime. So that was kind of a cool story. But, again, Tyler Plants has certainly got things going at Providence. They got a runner-up finish, and last year they were a semifinalist, I believe. So, living up to that tradition. And the final one I got on my list is Naperville Central at Lincoln Way West. I'm pretty high on Naperville Central. I like the
me too.
balance on offense. And this is this is one of those non-rivalry conference games in this conference. Two teams that probably would never play each other any other way because they're not even in the same class. I wouldn't call this a rant, but again, it's not. I mean, it's a great game for fans from the standpoint of it's two good teams, but it's not really. It's not really a game that I think is necessary. I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Not as necessary as Lincoln Way West playing one of the other Lincoln Ways, or as Naperville Central playing Neuqua Valley. Both of those should be happening. They're not, but we get this game instead, which should be a good game. So, that's kind of what I would have to say about it. Yeah.
You got to get it off your chest, Mike. We're here for you. So I get it. I'm with you on that too. I agree that, again, if this was a multi-year deal, I would really vent. But since this is still under a quote-unquote 1-year trial run, and everything I've heard, Mike, is, and I believe we said this last week too, and I've talked to a few more coaches since then, and the consensus field with the coaches I've talked to in that conference on both sides has said, generally everyone's okay with it so far, that there really hasn't been any gripings. Obviously a lot of this is off the record, and I'm sure if there were gripes, they would tell me right away. But no, it seems like there's a lot of similarities. I think everyone's excited to go against some different teams and some new teams. They are well aware of the scheduling issues, especially as you mentioned with the Napervilles not playing, having to play each other in a non-conference, and some of the other, the Lincoln Ways not playing each other. Certainly they're all well aware of that, but can that be corrected and fixed? I would imagine so. I think if you want to get it done bad enough, you'd be able to. So, We'll see. Again, I just think I think by probably the end of the regular season or maybe a little bit after, Mike, hopefully we'll have a little bit more guidance on whether the Southwest Valley cooperation, whatever you want to, mingling of these two conferences, if it's here to stay, I think by then we'll have a pretty decent idea.
Well, I don't think the issue is the combination. The issue is just how they drew up the divisions.
Right.
I think it makes a lot of sense if you would just have more geographically based divisions. And I understand that there are some schools that don't want to have geographic based divisions, which I think is wrong, honestly.
Yep.
And this goes back to Matt Now's very good realignment of this conference that we talked about in week 1, I think, when one of his suggestions. It basically had almost all the natural rivalries preserved. So if they would do something like that, I think that I don't know why you wouldn't continue it if you would do something like that. And I guess we'll wait and see for sure. But one of the strange things about it too is, a lot of athletic departments get a lot of money from the football gate and the concession stand and that sort of thing. And, why some of these ADs are leaving those games on the table doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I don't know what the attendance is for all of these games. And obviously we've got another 5 weeks to go, so we won't know the full picture until the end of the year. But if you had a Lincoln Way Central, Lincoln Way West football game, how many people do you think would be there?
Quite a few.
Or Lincoln Way Central and Lincoln Way East. And if you had a Naperville Central and Nepo Valley game, how many people do you think would be there? Quite a few, I'm sure. So I don't know.
We'll get some guidance, I'm sure.
It feels like it could be a kind of an ongoing weekly rant, but it's not even. I'm not even thinking that it doesn't even feel like a rant to me. It just feels honestly more like common sense. But it's like it doesn't aggravate me as much as the Heat did, to be honest.
Yeah, so. How about it? Yeah, the Heat Saturday was no joke for sure. It was. Everyone felt it for sure. And hopefully, like I said, this week, I think actually it's raining right now as I speak, as I look out the window. So hopefully we'll get a front end and drop those temperatures a little bit and get a real fall feel. So, and by the way, Mike, I know you can appreciate this more than anyone. So I get to Glenwood High School and I get through the gates and they let me in. Everyone's very friendly, and sitting right there on a big white table, printed copies of the football rosters for everyone. Just take one. Go ahead. I'll help yourself. Take one. Full rosters, both teams. You know what? It was so nice. I took 2 of them, Mike.
Yeah. So let's. I think you just gave me an idea. Let's do the weekly roster breakdown. So.
Okay.
At St. Francis. There was not a roster, but there was a QR code, I want to say. Is that right? I'm trying to remember. I think that's right. So no issues there. QR codes are fine. It's like I've said that. It's probably not my number one preference, but I can live with it. At Taft, they did not have anything at the gate, but they did have. I went up to the press box, and they had extra copies of the Taft roster. So I'm good there. They had had one copy of the Amundsen roster. Okay, I took a picture of it, which is kind of what I do usually, actually.
Right.
And then Amundsen, there's a teacher there named Craig Newman, who I've worked with over the years at many different spots, including the Sun-Times and the Times of Northwest Indiana. He's a teacher at Amundsen now, and he does some photography at their games, and he gave me a copy of the Amundsen roster, so we were good to go with that. The moral of that story is it always helps to to know people.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, okay. I guess I take that back. So St. Francis did have physical rosters. That's what it was. I got the last one, actually. I got there pretty early, and I got the very last printed roster. So that was the same story.
I also want to add for my Saturday game, Lyons Township, beautiful roster, varsity on both varsities on each side. Lovely blue paper, Mike. So in Lions blue. So, and again, just waiting right there when you walk in. And again, I don't ask for much more than that, Mike. So, again, I always go to Lions. Whenever I go to Lions, I got to give a shout out to someone, Dr. Jennifer Tyrell, who is the proud principal of Lyons Township High School. Mike, she is one of the coolest principals I've ever met. She is at everything. She is obviously by far, hands down, the biggest supporter of Lyons Township sports and athletics and activities. She's awesome. We took our yearly selfie, and I had my roster, and I was all set to go. So shout out to Dr. Terrell, who's one of the best.
Yeah, and so we're a little bit early, so I got a couple of other nuggets to throw here too.
Fire away.
I met the Taft principal, Ryan Glowax, who I think I'm pronouncing that right. He used to be the athletic director there, and Mark Grishaber was the Taft principal. He stepped down. He had some health issues, I believe, but Taft is one of the public league schools that's really pushing sports, and you can tell from the administration on down. And that's such a big thing, at any school, public league or anywhere. If your administration is behind you, then the athletic director and the coaches will tell you, then it's a lot easier to get things done. So, and one other thing from St. Francis, so I get there, and I don't usually carry cash. So that's just the way it is in 2024. It's a cash-only concession stand, and I kind of lamented that fact on X. I posted about that. When I was talking to Bob McMillan after the game, he said, "You shouldn't have to pay for food here." And I was kind of surprised that he even knew about it.
Bob's on top of it, believe me. He's on top of it.
He said, my wife saw your tweet. She told me about it, basically. But so I'm going to start bringing money going forward.
Yeah.
It feels a little surprising to me, though, that especially because every ticketing
is cashless now. Yeah. Yep.
Right. It's not only cashless, but you can't even buy tickets there. I mean, you have to buy them online, usually in advance. I guess sometimes you can scan the QR code right at the gate and then buy them from there. But it's like, so it seems a little unusual, that you would be very old school with the concession stand and very new school with the tickets. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's good. Yeah, so we'll do that. We'll stay on roster watch, and again, we'll let you know how things go. And again, I'm glad we do that little shout out, because that's part of the story. I mean, you mentioned people, and I have met so many different people, so many great people over the years, and Mike, it's truly half the story. Are just the people and the personalities you run into doing what we do, and it's cool. To me, it's one of the better parts of the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, one of the things back when I was at the Times of Northwest Indiana. This is going back a ways, but one of the things we wrote a series. I don't remember what it was called, but it was about the people who are basically the support staff for athletics, like the person who's been the PA announcer for a school for 30 years or something like that, or the athletic trainer who's been there for 25 years and stuff like that. And it does take a lot of people to make it all work, for sure. And there are a lot of people who have some interesting stories that don't get told very often. So that was kind of cool. But and like you said, it goes all the way up to the top. The principals who are involved, like Jennifer Terrell and Ryan Glowax, that's pretty impressive to see them out there, on a Saturday afternoon in particular, because I mean they've got families too, you know, and
no doubt
they like to be, you know, with their families on the weekend, but you know they're out there, you know, supporting their athletic team. So that is good to see.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, I think that's probably going to wrap it up for us. Well, I already know where I'm going Friday. Saturday, I don't know. I'm going to have to sit down and really look at Saturday, but I'm sure I'll wind up at a game Saturday. Any idea where you're heading yet, or?
On Friday, I do know that I'm going to Gately to see Simeon for the first time this year. We got a 4:00 game against Brooks. I am probably going to go out on Thursday. I'm not sure where, and I will definitely be out on Saturday again.
Not sure.
Oh, actually, Barrington has its homecoming game on Saturday.
Conant, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's the Broncos have one day home game every year, and I've been to a few of those.
Yep, me too.
It's a little bit of a hike for both of us, obviously, but I'd like to see Barrington, so that might be my best shot to do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, but, Barrington will. You know, it'll be a travel week for me if I decide to do Barrington, because I'll do that Shanahan to Crystal Lake to Shanahan to Barrington to Shanahan commute. So, which is always fun. At least
it's a good thing. It's a good thing you got the house cleaned this weekend. So.
I did. I was very productive during the Bears game. So, all right. I think that'll do it for Mike Clark and EDGYTIM. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you listening every week. And again, look for either Mike or I will just put a tweet out there on Saturday or early Sunday if you have any questions for us. We'd love to get those. So by all means, ask away. And so that'll do it. So thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you again next week.